Hi everyone, welcome back to my class. Students, in this session, you'll understand the detailed process of fertilization. That means you'll understand how exactly the fertilization takes place in the human female reproductive organ and what exactly happens after the fertilization. Clear? So before getting to know about the process of fertilization, let us once again recall about the different parts of the human female reproductive organ. So, when I talk about the human female reproductive organ, the first important part which you all have to understand is the ovaries. See, there are two ovaries. We call it as the pair of ovaries. Okay, so this pair of ovaries are present on either side of the uterus. That means one on the left hand side and another on the right hand side. So there are two ovaries which are present on the either side of the uterus. Which is the uterus? This region we call it as uterus. Clear? So then what is the function of ovaries? The ovaries, it produces the female sex cells. If you observe here, there is presence of female sex cells. So these female sex cells are called as ovum, or it is also called as eggs. Okay, the female sex cells, which is called as ovum or eggs, are released by the ovaries. Apart from this, that means apart from the ovum or the eggs, the ovaries also produces a hormone called as estrogen and progesterone. What is the function of estrogen and progesterone? I hope you all have remembered. They help in the development of secondary sexual characters. What is meant by secondary sexual characters? That means the secondary sexual characters are like, see, the development of the breast region, or the start of menstrual cycle, or development of mammary glands, which are helpful for feeding the babies. Okay, and appearance of pimples on the face and increase in the length of the hip region. All these are some of the secondary sexual characters, and these characters are because of the release of the hormone which is called as estrogen and the progesterone. Clear? So let us move towards next part, that is the fallopian tube. If you look at the fallopian tube, there are two fallopian tubes. Okay, one on the either side of the uterus. So the fallopian tube is actually called as the site of fertilization. Do note it, it is called as the site of fertilization. Okay, so there is presence of two fallopian tubes. Okay, so this fallopian tube is connected to the ovary. You can observe the fallopian tubes. They are connecting to the ovaries and they extend till the uterus. They are extending till the uterus. Clear? So the next part is the uterus. So this part is called as the uterus. Uterus is the pear-shaped muscular organ. It is the muscular organ. It helps in the development of the fetus. See, when I say the fetus, it is the baby. The development of the baby, it takes place in this region. It is inside the uterus. Clear? Moving to the next part, which is called as the cervix. Cervix is the narrow part which is present just below the uterus. And the last part is the vagina. So vagina is a tube-like structure. It is a tube-like structure. It helps in passing the sperms. See, when there is intercourse between the male and the female, that means the sexual act between the male and female, what happens? The sperms get discharged inside the vagina. And the sperm which enter into the vagina, it reaches the fallopian tube. Okay, vagina is the region which receives the sperms and it helps in passing the sperms to reach the fallopian tube. Clear? So this is all about the parts of the human female reproductive organ. So now let us talk about the fertilization in detail. See, when I talk about fertilization, fertilization is the internal process. Why do we call it as internal process? Because the process takes place inside the body. Correct? So fertilization is the internal process. So what exactly happened during the fertilization? See, during the fertilization, there is fusion of male and female gametes. Male gametes means sperms. See, the sperms which enter through the vagina, it reaches the fallopian tube, and the eggs which are present in the ovary, it also enter to the fallopian tube. Here what happened? There will be a fusion. They combine. The sperms, it combines with the egg. Sperms, it combines with the egg. As a result of this, what happened? There will be a fusion of male and female gamete. That means the fusion of sperm and the egg. So as a result of this, what happened? The fertilization takes place. Clear? See, the fertilization occurs in the fallopian tube. Every month, one matured egg from the ovary will be released and that entered into the fallopian tube. So during this time, what happens? If the sperms, if they get ejaculated in the vagina, that means if it is discharged in the vagina, what happens? It will reaches the fallopian tube. As it reaches the fallopian tube, what happens? They will combine. What will combine? The sperms, it will combine with the egg which is present in the fallopian tube. As a result of this, what happens? The fertilization takes place. So during the fertilization, the nucleus of the sperm as well as the nucleus of the egg, they will combine to form a single nucleus. Are you getting my point? The nucleus which is present in the sperms and the nucleus which is present in the egg, they will combine and they will form a single celled organism. That is, they will form a single nucleus. So this is what happens during the fertilization. So as a result of this fertilization, what is formed? A new organism is formed. A new organism is formed as a result of the fertilization. So before that, let us understand what happens to the unfertilized egg which was released by the ovary. Every month ovary releases the one egg, one matured egg, right? And this egg will be staying in the fallopian tube. If it does not meet the sperm, then we call that egg as the unfertilized egg. When it meets the sperm, it will become fertilized. When it does not meet the sperm, what happens? It is called as the unfertilized egg. So what happens to this unfertilized egg which is present in the fallopian tube? Let's understand this bit more clearly. As you all know that one egg which is released by the ovary, and this egg will be released by the ovary for every 28 days once. Every 28 days once, one matured egg will be released by the ovary and it will stay in the fallopian tube. And this egg will be remaining alive for 24 hours in the fallopian tube. Please understand. See, the egg which is present in the fallopian tube will remain alive only for 24 hours. And within this 24 hours, what happens? The sperms has to come and meet the egg. Then only the fertilization takes place. Suppose if the sperms does not meet the egg within 24 hours, then what happens? There will be no fertilization. Then what happens to this egg? It is called as now unfertilized egg because it is not coming in contact with the sperm. Correct? So the unfertilized egg which is present in the fallopian tube, after 24 hours, it get discharged into the uterus. Clear? The unfertilized egg, after 24 hours, when it does not come in contact with the sperm, it just fall into the uterus. It degenerate into the uterus. Clear? So this is what happens when the egg does not come in contact with the sperm. So now let's understand what will be the result of fertilization. You all know that as a result of fertilization, what happened? The nucleus of the sperm, here we have understood the sperms, it meets the eggs present in the ovary. As a result of this, what happened? The fertilization. The nucleus of the sperm and the nucleus of the egg, it will combine to form the single nucleus. So now what is formed? Single nucleus. That means single celled organism is formed. What do we call the single celled organism as? We call the single celled organism as zygote. The single celled organism which is formed as a result of the fusion of male and female gamete. That is the fusion of the sperm along with the egg. Correct? We call it as the fertilization. So this fusion will result in the formation of the zygote. What does it form? It forms the zygote. So what is the zygote called as? Zygote is called as the single celled organism. So what happens to the zygote later? See, if you observe this image, you can observe the zygote. So this is the image which is representing the zygote. So this is the single celled organism. So this zygote, it will divide repeatedly to form more number of cells. If you observe this, there is single cell, correct? So the zygote which contains the single cell will further start to divide. The Cells, it repeatedly divide and it forms an embryo. Zygote, it further start to repeatedly divide its cells and it will form an embryo. See, if you observe this picture, you will clearly understand. So, here is the fertilization process which took place, and once the fertilization took place, what is formed? Zygote, which is called as single celled organism, is formed, and this zygote, it start to repeatedly divide its cell. As a result of this, what is formed? Embryo is formed. What is formed? Embryo is formed. Okay, so this embryo, it will start moving towards the uterus. It will start moving towards the uterus within 4 to 5 days. See, after the fertilization, within 4 to 5 days, zygote will develop into an embryo, and this embryo from the fallopian tube, it will enter to the uterus. Because what is the reason it entering to the uterus? Because the embryo will develop into a baby. So the actual development of the baby will take place. So the actual development of the baby is taking place inside the uterus. Clear? So that is the reason what happened. The embryo will enter into the uterus. So what happened to the embryo later? The embryo which entered to the uterus, it will implant in the uterus. The embryo which has been entered to the uterus, what happened after reaching the uterus? The embryo will implant to the wall of the uterus. If you observe this, this is the uterus. This is the wall of the uterus. This is the wall of the uterus. So, the embryo is implanting to the wall of the uterus. You can observe here. So, after the implantation, what happened? The embryo will further continuously develop to become a fetus. What is meant by fetus? Fetus is the advanced stage of the embryo. The next stage of the embryo, we call it as fetus, and the fetus will remain in this region for 9 months, and then it takes birth as a baby. I hope you all got a clear idea about what is zygote, what is embryo, and what is fetus. See, the zygote is the single-celled organism. When does the zygote is formed? See, when the sperm meets the egg, what happened? The fertilization takes place. As a result of this fertilization, zygote is formed. Zygote is the single-celled organism. Now, this zygote, which is single-celled organism, will start to divide repeatedly. The cells start to divide repeatedly. As a result of this, what is formed? Embryo is formed. Embryo is the next stage of the zygote. So this embryo, what happened? It will discharge. It will enter to the uterus within 4 to 5 days, and then it get implanted in the uterus. Then this, what happened? This embryo will further develop. So the next stage of the embryo is called as the fetus. Next stage of the embryo, we call it as fetus. And this fetus, it will remain in the uterus for 9 months and it will take birth as a baby. I hope you got a clear picture about this zygote, fetus and an embryo. Correct. So now, after the implantation, now what happened? This embryo, it got implanted. Correct. So after the implantation of the embryo, it has to develop, right? The embryo has to develop. So for the development of this embryo, the embryo need the nutrition. See, if we have to develop, if we have to increase our body size, what is needed? We need nutrition to our body, right? Similarly, for the development of this embryo also need the nutrition. For the growth of its body, for the development of its body, it needs the nutrition. Let's understand about this in detail now. So as you all got a clear picture about the implantation of the embryo on the wall of the uterus. So this is the wall. See, if you look at this picture, you will understand the uterus. This is the wall of the uterus. So this is the wall of the uterus where exactly the embryo will implant. Okay. So the embryo, it entered from the fallopian tube to the wall of the uterine and it get implanted in the uterine. So what is next? What happens next? So let's understand this in detail. So once the embryo reaches the uterus, a specialized structure called placenta is formed. Placenta is a specialized structure which is formed after the implantation of the embryo inside the wall of the uterus. So this is the wall of the uterus. So to this wall the embryo get implanted. So once this embryo get implanted, a specialized structure called placenta is formed. So the placenta is a disc-like structure which is embedded inside the uterine wall. See, uterine wall is the wall of the uterus. Uterine wall, it is the wall of the uterus. So inside the uterine wall, the placenta is embedded. It is been enclosed. Okay. So this placenta, it helps in providing the nutrition for the development of the embryo. So embryo is the next stage of the zygote. So this embryo, it will develop into a fetus. Correct. The advanced stage of the embryo is called as a fetus. So for its development, the placenta will provide the nutrition. So how does this nutrition will travel through the placenta? It will travel through the mother's blood. Mother's blood is the medium for carrying the nutrition with the help of placenta. The required nutrition through the mother's blood enters inside the embryo, and the embryo also releases the waste products. It also releases the waste products. See, even when we take the food get digested and the unwanted materials will be excreted out of our body. Similarly, the embryo also takes the good things with the help of mother's blood through the placenta, and it also releases the waste products. The embryo also releases the waste products, and this waste products will enter again through the mother blood, and through the mother blood it will enter to the excretory system of the mother, and then it will be thrown out of the body. So this is what happens with the help of placenta. The placenta also contains the finger-like projections which is called as the villi. So I hope you all are familiar with this word called as villi. So villi is the finger-like projections which are rich in the blood vessels. Correct? So the placenta contains the villi on the embryo side of the tissue, and on the mother side there is presence of the blood spaces. I repeat, the placenta, it contains the villi on the embryo side of the tissue, and on the mother side there is blood spaces. So even this blood spaces also contains the finger-like projections called as villi. Then what is the role of villi? Why the villi are present in this region? See, villi, it provides the large surface area for the glucose and oxygen which passes from the mother to embryo. So the glucose, in the sense the nutrition, the food which enters to the embryo, and the oxygen which is needed for its breathing. So both the things will be entered through the placenta. So villi is providing the large surface area for the transportation of the glucose and the oxygen. Clear? And finally, the development of child inside the mother's body takes place approximately 9 months. So after 9 months, the child is born as a result of rhythmic contractions of the muscles in the uterus. That means this uterus will contract. As a result of the contraction of the uterus, the baby is born. Clear? I hope you all have clearly understood about the fertilization and different steps which takes place after the fertilization. Clear? So in the next video, I'll come up with another topic. That's all for this session. I'm signing off. Thank you.